during the presentations, please type them into the chat box. Also, we'll have time for the questions towards the end. Feedback link will be posted daily in the chat box and Telegram towards the end of the sessions. Type the questions in the chat box. Kindly fill up on all 7 days to get the e-certificate. The audio and video from the host side will be muted for all the participants. We request you not to unmute the audio and video. Your cooperation is highly appreciated. Today, day 6 for the technical sessions, the resource person is Mr. Shakir Bashir, Senior Engineering Leader, Boeing Corporations, USA. The topic, Innovations in E-Commerce Technology. Words are like rose petals that are sprinkled with fragrance to invite one and all with the warm greetings. Not merely words or heartfelt feelings filled with the emotions add flavor to welcome you. Or excellence in every field, on every occasion, in every walk of our life is being exemplified for a good self. The topic of FDP focus on developing the minds of the future citizens, from the disciplinary minds to the synthesizing mind, to the creative mind to the respectful mind, then to the ethical mind, and helped us to become proactive contributors to a healthy society. To begin today's sessions orderly, let us first invoke the presence of the Almighty. Now, I call Anisha, final BCom, Information System Management, to recite few verses from the Holy Quran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Suratul Al-Hujurat, verses 13. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhan nasu إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعرفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. صدق الله العظيم. Translation. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you know one another. Verily, the most honorable of you with Allah is the believer who has at-taqwa, one of the muttaqeen. Verily, Allah is all-knowing and all-aware. Jazakumullahu khairan kaseera.
Thank you, Hanisha. Welcome the challenges. Look for the opportunities in every situation to learn and grow in wisdom. Now, I call Ms. Nikat Tasin, Assistant Professor from the Department of BCom, Information System Management and Corporate Secretaryships, to welcome the gathering.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good day to one and all present here for the 6th day of the International Faculty Development Program on Professional Progression in Commerce and Management. On behalf of Justice Bashir Ahmad Syed College for Women, the Department of Corporate Secretaryship, Information Systems and Management, and Business Administration, it is my honor and privilege to extend a warm welcome to everyone present here virtually for today's technical session on innovation in e-commerce technology. I take this opportunity to welcome our respected principal, Dr. Amtul Aziz, our Vice Principal, Dr. Firdaus Jahan, for their support and guidance behind all our activities. I would also like to welcome Dr. Barkat, Dean of Business Studies, Head of the Department of Corporate Secretaryship and Information Systems and Management, who is the motivating factor for all these events. I take pleasure in welcoming our resource person for the day, Shakir Bashir, in He has completed his Bachelor of Engineering, Electrical Engineering, the University of Madras, Tamil Nadu, India. Masters in Business Administration, Northwest University, WA, USA. He's a Senior Engineering Leader, Boeing Corporation, WA, USA. I take pleasure in welcoming you, sir. He is a well-established professional in the information technology industry with 22 years of experience. He has seen the evolution of software and management style within the broad spectrum of projects and engineers. He has contributed his skills to the FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google companies, and delivered high-scale applications to the marketplace. He is an advocate for the rapid innovation and prototyping, and he has helped countless students and engineers to jumpstart their innovative ideas and these viable products. We are happy to welcome you, sir. You have such a multi-faced personality amongst us. We are grateful to him for accepting our invitation to share his knowledge. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. I also take this opportunity to welcome all our delegates and participants of this faculty development program who took out their valuable time to dignify their presence. I wish all of you a fruitful learning. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Nikatasi. Now, I hereby request the resource person, Mr. Shakir Bashir, to take over the session and cast the light of knowledge upon us.
Thanks for the brief introduction, Dr. Began. That was super warm welcome. Just so Seattle is pitch black. Even though it's like early morning, it's still dark outside, so the lightings are not great. But I'll try my best and see if I can elaborate the content and get things going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my presentation, and I'm going to just walk through one slide at a time. And the way I structured the presentation was, it's one of the disclaimers I have to throw that here is I'm not an academic person, so I'm coming from a purely industry point of view. So my experiences and my my work culture and whatnot, where I have groomed engineers, those are all very, very practical. So we'll go over that in a bit. All right, so let's start with screen share. So if I had to go full screen, will that work? Let's try that. So is this working?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it's working,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, perfect. So the topic I picked up when the faculty member reached out to me was innovations in e-commerce. But yeah, even though we know what are the innovations, and everyone is excited on things happening around the globe, and in that process we also spend tons of money, right? However, there are things which has to be highlighted, and it falls under social responsibility, etc. But we'll get to that. Okay, so here it's a very simple agenda. So what I'm going to do is to just go over the fundamentals of commerce in general, and the next, how did we get there, right? So how do we went from point A to point B? And here we are on the e-commerce side, and the e-commerce really started on 1993, if I'm right. It's an innovation which triggered from the necessity. Right? So we'll talk about some evolution, how we got to this point, and we also need to talk about psychology aspects of it, because this is super important. Um, I'm not a psychologist, however, I can highlight a thing or two for you to have a perspective, right? And we can see, how much trends are evolving, and you would just recognize it. And what I wanted to do is to provide you some live examples. Like for instance, it's very hard to articulate what are the innovations in the e-commerce side. However, if I show you a demo and subtle things how the innovations are injected, and by how the industries are exploiting users. Exploiting is a very harsh word because there's there are non-profits and stuff, but not everyone is ethical player. So let's agree to that. So let's see. Yes, some of the disclaimers I usually start with disclaimers, because sometimes it's very hard to give credit if you don't know where the content is coming from. Like for example, I picked up the content for this presentation from multiple sources. I wanted to give a credit, but it's very hard to get the sources. So here you go. 90% of the content is not my content. So, but what I did was I put together a good presentation. So the second disclaimer I wanted to throw here is it's super dark here. Seattle. It's 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and still it's pitch black, so the lighting is going to be an issue. The third disclaimer I wanted to throw that is, even though I have some academic experience and stuff, but I cannot claim myself as an academic professional. So it's the thought process I have and the content I have today is some things are just purely coming from my experience. So it could be wrong, it could be right, depending on whom you ask. Right. I think that's all I have on the disclaimer side. Okay. Even though the faculty member gave an awesome introduction about me, but I just wanted to register how I landed here. Right. So it's a journey. Right? So the way you have to see is you have to work, but you have to enjoy the work. Right? And sometimes money matters, right? So you have higher ambitions and you want to get things done. You wanted to apply for a higher mortgage. However, if you don't enjoy it, it's very hard to carve out a path. It's trust me. Right? So I went from Microsoft to Amazon to Boeing, and every step of the way, I had to give credit to a lot of mentors. Right? So if you think you can achieve all these experiences and paycheck all by yourself, you're kidding. It's not going to happen. So 20 years of industry experience. What did I learn? right? So that's there. Right? So one of the key learnings I have on the industry is how things can go from north to south just in a split second. Right? Um, like for instance, you might have seen a lot of companies went bankrupt. Like the next day, you wouldn't even know it. You woke up from your bed, and then uh, the company is bankrupt. Right? So this industry is very very volatile. Right? However, that being said, all the industry is volatile because it depends on the need, and the need changes, and if the need is you know uh, well defined, uh, that's going to be like, it's going to take us like 5 or 6 years. All right, so let's get to the fundamentals. I want to talk about the commerce fundamentals because yes, you might have read it in your textbooks, and these are the exams you might have went out and scored it. But did you understand you know like what commerce means? And oftentimes we overlook the innovation side, uh, you know, which is which happened like 300 or 400 years back. Uh, So, what is commerce? Right? For yeah, for us to call commerce as an entity or an action, you need three things. Right? You need a buyer, and you need a seller, and you need a product. Right? And the product could be anything. Right? So how do we know what product the seller wants, or how does the buyer know what product to sell it? Right? So those are the details we can talk about. Right. One of the goals for the seller, actually there are two goals. So the whole idea is in participating in commerce is, that's how they know. I'm talking about like 300 or 400 years back. That's how they can earn money, right? So there are things you can do it at home, and then you can go to your neighbor's house, and then you can just sell it, right? And your goal as a seller is to yield a profit, right? And which is okay, right? Because uh, the profit is what drives you to make bigger investments, and and one of the attributes uh, which is also commonality with the buyer and seller is, there's always a product exchange, right? So you you have a product, and yes, you may need a product with lower capacity, right? Like if you're harvesting corn, like how much corn you can eat, right? Even with a bigger family, you cannot eat, right? So some point of time, you have to give that to someone, right? And that's where things starts, right? So the buyer starts contacting the seller, and the people who are making an investment in infrastructure, they yield a profit, right? So seller yields a profit, and also the middleman yields a profit, right? So why do we exchange a product, right? So why is it mandatory, right? So it's a global problem, right? if you don't exchange it. So the wheat production in India, there are a lot of countries dependent on it, right? And if wheat is not exchanged for something else, uh, pretty much, there's like one section of population may not know what wheat is, right? So the grains coming from Ukraine, the Africans, if they don't have that shipment, they will, they don't have resources, to sustain. So there's also a question of how seller, comes up with these prices, right? Because it's always a mystery, if Steve Jobs says iPhone is $800, I would question that, right? So why $800, right? Why not $200? Because the cost to manufacture, maybe it's just $150. Right? So the seller's goal is to yield a lot of profit, and in a global market, that's how you grow, right? And how do you define the seller price? So you go from cost to manufacture, and this one is easy to do, right? And then you add all the overheads and add what intended profit you want. So usually it's 20% to 50%. And then the seller comes up with the price, and we just go buy that laptop, right? The laptop is priced $1,200, right? And on the Thanksgiving day, usually the laptop will be like $100 off. But the seller is not losing anything; they're just taking away 5% of the profit, which is good. So I'll just go through this really quick. These are boring topics, but there's always an overhead which you need to recognize when we talk about exchanging products. Right? And just depending on how many things you have, this is going to balloon up to higher cost. So the manufacturing overhead, administration overhead. So administration overhead is like the employees and selling and marketing overhead. Marketing is a big component. So if you turn on the TV, that's predominantly like one thing you'll always land with. And distribution overhead. So there are multiple overhead costs. But what I can tell you is this is not going to go away. So nobody in the right mind is going to come back and say, how do we optimize these overheads? And yes, there are few attempts, for optimizing the overheads, but the manufacturers or the sellers, they really don't have time because they're racing towards building a profit, and any investment is going to be a slowdown. So these days, the companies are allocating budget for the research component, like $1 billion and $2 billion, just to figure out how to optimize all this overhead. And even if they can bring up their savings, that's going to make a lot of difference for the final cost. All right, we just we're still on the commerce side, and we'll get to the e-commerce shortly. Okay, so here, as a buyer, you do have some goals, right? One of the goals you have is you like the product and you want that product, right? And you wish it's going to be cheap, right? And so, in my experience, nobody gives you like cheap product. What they give you is a perception of the cheap, right? Um, so in a biggest sale of yours, which is Thanksgiving, you know, all the manufacturers just throw low quality product. Yes, those are cheap, but it's going to break down like in 6 months. So what's the point? And the same goal, right? So the seller, they want to exchange what they have and get a better one. So if you have a older television, you want a plasma television, so you wanted to like exchange it, right? Right. So I I think I set the stage of commerce, right, in general. Now let's take a look on the innovations. So these are the innovations which happen before e-commerce, and it's a big deal, right? So one thing I can always assure you is without commerce, it, world would have been like uh, you know there's less innovations, right? So the shipping industry got evolved because the British wanted to find out a path to India, right? Because India had a product and they didn't know how to get to India. And why they want to go to India? So yes, India had like a lot of spies, but the bigger problem for British was the only way you can connect Europe and Asia is is through Bosporus river. Right? It's in Turkey, so it's just about 1 mile. So you can literally swim. If you're a good swimmer, you can swim around from Europe to Asia, and then that's how the Silk Road was placed. Right? However, when Turkey realized that they had the power, so they started taxing British, right? And British wanted to solve this problem because they don't want to pay anybody else, right? It's because one of the key attributes they have is they can innovate, right? So innovation has two things, right? One is there has to be an investment, and the British government was bold enough to make that investment. And Columbus and Vasco da Gama, they built out a ship, and they were able to figure out a path. Right? And there are subtle innovations which are I would say mind blowing. Right? So in order to reach India, right, one of the challenges Columbus had was to figure out the latitude and the longitude. Because if you don't know where you are in the Atlantic or Indian Ocean, it's going to be like you're dead, right? You don't know which direction you're going. Yeah. So the latitude and longitude calculations was super big deal. Right? And so what I'm saying is, yes, it turned out to be all not so good story, right? By colonizing countries and stuff. But however, think about the sheer innovations which came from the early days, and we shouldn't overlook that. Right? These are very good starting point for us to, you know, build a SpaceX. Right? So if we didn't know how to do, the ships, it's going to be harder to understand how to build the space shuttle. But we are slowly venturing into uh, e-commerce now. So the way I see it is, there are two types of commerce. The one we discussed, it's a traditional commerce, You have a buyer, seller, and for the most part, there's a human interaction. There are no Zoom calls there, so they have to go in person. And if you've been to Silk Road, it's a treacherous journey from China to Turkey. It's not easy, and by just transferring the goods to Turkey to the Europe, a lot of people died. So those are traditional commerce, and right about 1990, the innovations took a high gear, and when CPU, was a big deal in Silicon Valley, and embedded systems are a big thing. uh, Um, Everyone started thinking, why constrain ourselves to just do this, right? So the way I see it is, you have to ask questions, and for the most part, you may be wrong, but that's okay. Okay, so that shouldn't stop you to ask questions. And if you have kids, you have to encourage them to ask questions, because what you're doing is you're just opening door for them to uh, take up the next innovation cycle. Right? So the electronic commerce is now e-commerce, and what I can tell you is e-commerce is fading away. So we are into a different paradigm now. So here are the ways you can look at e-commerce. So this is not an exhaustive list, but this gives you a good idea on what are the marketplace the e-commerce facilitates. Right? Um, if you just take one item and put it on the traditional commerce, it's going to be super hard, right? Like business to consumer. Yes, you can do it, but you have to travel, right? So you need to go from one point A to point B. Um, E-commerce facilitates that, so you can categorize it. So you're defining the profile of who the seller is and who the buyer is. So from that point of view, um, business to consumer, right, B2C, it's a popular one, and everything you see today is business to consumer. You order a food that's coming from the business, right? And there are business to business. These are like, yeah, a warehouse scenario, right? So warehouse can deliver products to a mid-sized company, and they can package it and add their own profits and go from there. And there are a few times, the businesses have to support government, because there are a lot of programs which are executed across the world. So the government funding usually is very thin. However, if you don't have this layer, it's going to be hard, right? And consumer to consumer. So these are very interesting, consumer to consumer. So let me give an example. I I have come across a couple of YouTube videos where there's no seller, there's no buyer, but whoever is recording the video is a consumer, right? Because he's using a platform to consume the platform, and somebody else goes to that platform and they increase the click rate, right? So this is like mind-boggling, because somehow we figured out to generate money uh, by just not having a product at all, right? So having all the TikTok videos, there's no product really. You just yes, there are some nonsense videos, for sure, which is hilarious. Yeah, I like them. But you are also increasing the click rate, and they get paid, right? So it's a area where everyone seems to recognize that there's one path to earn, right? Is that good? I don't know. Uh, you know, because from my point of view, I always thought you start with a degree and you go from there and you go to a leadership job or whatnot, and start innovations from there, right? And consumer to business, right? So these are the interesting situation. Like as a consumer, you can sell the product, and there's not much strings attached. Like if you have a broken laptop, and if you think that someone is ready to pay, you can just start the bidding in eBay, and yeah, if someone is willing to pay, so be it, right? So that's how you need to look, right? So you're using a business platform to entice uh, a different customer to get it. It kind of overlaps consumer to consumer, but you have a business layer here. Okay, I'm checking the time. I'm like 30 minutes down here, but we'll get through this faster. Okay. So this is going to be a crowded field, so I'm going to use my specs to just do the word. So what I know it's going to be harder to just read through it, but let me explain what's going on here. And this is one of the slide. I wanted to credit the author, but I don't know who the author is, because this is like such a great story. Okay? So if you look at the evolution of e-commerce, right? It started from 1995, and there are slots in innovations where there are innovations are done as a investment, or innovations are the primary driver for the new business, right? So 1995 to 1998, the first e-commerce idea, of course, it's coming from Jeff Bezos. Maybe somebody else has the idea, but he figured it out, right? So they started with the books, music, and movies, right? And it defied rational, right? Why would you go buy a book in online, and how do you trust, like, some guy in a garage is like shipping you yeah your book, right? So, but if you are on a timeline, right? So the generation where the innovations on e-commerce happened, they were very passionate. They believed in experimentation, right? And which is why they started with books and moved to music, and slowly to movies. And the next phase is from 1998 to 2001. Is now there are companies, they sort of thought, yeah, it's a good idea, it's a bad idea, but if customers are going there, why don't we just make an investment, right? So the apparels and electronics are the next ones, right? So it wasn't a full scale, but they put together a platform where you can just go and buy a few things, like a USB stick or laptops. But the popular way was still going to Circuit City or Best Buy. Right? Sorry, I'm taking examples from USA. I don't know how I can interpret in the Indian shops. Okay. So the next phase was from 2001 to 2005, and this is this is where most companies, they recognize that, okay, if they don't get on e-commerce boat, they'll miss the customers. And how do they get on the e-commerce boat? They have to facilitate, right, to make an online transactions. And from 1995 to 2005, Amazon made a lot of grounds, right, on in terms of uh, how the e-commerce can be defined as platform. Right? So he pretty much came up with how seller wants to buy and how buyer wants to, or seller wants to sell, and how buyer wants to buy. So the challenge here was, how do you come up with the user experience if you don't know what the user experience is? And that is the key part in the innovations, right? And I can tell you, like, lot of people are paid big bucks for that. Just go to a room and then think and do nothing, and come out and say we did nothing. Still, you'll be getting paid. Yeah. Oops. All right. So the next phase was from 2005 to 2008. Some of the social media started catching up, and they found a business case to make it tangible for consumer to know the product, right? So Facebook was a big thing here, and MySpace was a big thing here. So how do you know what the product you want? You don't know, right? However, if you have searched at least once, and if you go to Facebook, you would be bombarded with, you know, a lot of recommendations, right? And that's how they link it to the e-commerce websites. Is that good? I think it's not good. Uh, but with the recent iPhone cookie interceptor, right? So things are better now. So the next evolution was, you know, every company started building websites. So this is the point where they started hiring a lot of developers, right? Managers, developers, and partly I was able to survive 22 years because, you know, number 4, number 5, number 6 was going on full speed. Right? So the hardest problem is, how do you tell people or directs, you know, on the innovation front, right? How do you explain to them? It's very hard to explain. And the last phase is now the mobiles, right? So all the companies caught up with mobile apps, and every transaction is done, you know, with mobile applications. Okay, so I'm 37 minutes down. I'm just gonna go a little bit faster. So one of the topic I wanted to touch is the psychology aspects of it, and the exploitations and conspiracy theories around. Um, I don't want to generalize commerce, but it's there on e-commerce, right? When I give you a couple of examples, I think you may understand. Right? So, you know, there was a time where the bottleneck for profit, you know, was very thin, and the companies are not able to, you know, go on like 50% profits, right? So what they ended up doing is to tap the psychological aspects of e-commerce, and it's definitely not ethical, right? So you're trying to manipulate or exploit, uh, like your customer, and make them pay for things they don't want. Right? Yeah, you know, because it's not ethical, right? So if we have to start fundamentally how the entire operations work, right? So if you just look at the brain, right, female and male, right? Yes, we can always say we are all equal and same. I respect that, but biologically, we are not. Right? For example, the corpus callosum in male brains are very thin, and in female brains are very thick. So why is that important? Because if the corpus callosum is thick, you are using both sides of the brain to make an informed decision, right? And but if it's thin, you are using only the left-hand side brain mostly, right? So if I go to a shop and if I had to buy three things, and if I forget one thing and it would have been just right there, right? Is that because of the corpus callosum? I don't know, but my wife, just goes ballistic on that, right? So here are some key points to understand, right? So this is not a kind of like, set the women and male debate, but understand how the exploitation happens, right? There is a science behind it, right? So, women prefer the hunt. Men want a quick and effortless process, right? So most times we get in and get out, right? And it's all tying to the corpus callosum, right? Women makes decisions on a more emotional level, whereas men approach decisions making with facts and data. Yeah, I never figured this out, because most times there's no data. Men are loyal to brands, and women are loyal to good service. They love customer service, right? And the most important thing, I recognized was women need little appreciation. That it could be from anyone. Like if my friend says that I got a good laptop, I'll say, yeah, you can also buy it, right? But for women's, appreciation is very important because, again, we are circling back to how the brain is designed, right? And that's why the good service is very important. So I want to touch, some random off topic. So there's this one thing common here, which is everything you see here, it's colored red. Okay. And I've seen a video, it just came across me, and one, I don't know, he's not even accredited, right? So like there was a Illuminati, and they always operate on the color red, right, on all the stuff, right? So it's a funny video, and it seems real, it seems convincing. However, you have to, as an academic student, you have to rely on your research, right? So you shouldn't be just taking, things which are coming from YouTube video because all they care about is clicks, right? So the reason why most of the fast food chains are red is because the same reason why we have traffic light red, right? It's the way our brain works, so the red defines if you are going to be a danger mode or a hunger mode, right? So every time you go to you see McDonald's maybe like a 1 mile away, all you're doing is just seeing the logo, right? And the next thing your kid is going to ask is, can we go to McDonald's? And because the brain takes control at that time, right? It's not some Illuminati which came up with all those red fashion colors. And this is just one thing I want to touch. So from an academic point of view, it's your responsibility to knock out all these beliefs, right? Okay. There are few things which are super important, and it's called clickbait, right? So you're alluded to your website or your e-commerce platform, and you don't even need the product, but they they present you with so much of sale and deals, it's very hard to resist. And yes, I have bought some crazy products which I didn't use it. I'm guilty that way. But that's an income, the manufacturers are counting on from just the clickbaits. Right? And the most people who fall for the clickbait is people who don't have that technology, uh, you know, exposure. Right? It's very hard to distinguish where the link goes and who's going to pay money. Right? Eventually, all the money will be like taken up, paid and going to the back. Uh, I don't want to go too much on this slide, but there are things to be, we need to be aware of how we build ourselves to a shopping addiction. Right? So if you go to American Addiction Center's resource, so they have a good definition of shopaholics. Right? And it's a it's a sad thing, right? Because you think that you are normal, but actually you are not, right? So a normal, you can identify a normal person, right? So yeah, it is what it is. And one of the innovations which came up from 1993 to till here is, where is my shopping cart? This how did they wrap the shopping cart into just one user interface? Right? So this it was a hard thing to do. Right? And funny thing is, if you go to a grocery store and take a shopping cart, you may just buy less things. But if you have a shopping cart in Amazon, you may end up buying more things, because that's a compulsive behavior, and that kind of falls into the shopper. It's an addiction, right? So this good and bad in the technology front. And however, when the innovations evolved, they also evolve the support systems, right? So there's a support center, there's a developer, but there's IT team, and there are programmers, and there's a warehousing. So it's a it's it has provided a lot of jobs, which is a good thing, right? And this also has opened the door for the startups. Right? So every startup, they have one goal. How do we facilitate a consumer and make just one problem better, right? And most times they start with good ethics. After they start tracking money, I don't know what happens. So they just never seen again. Right? So, but the startups are super important, right? So, and there are thousands of startups feeding on e-commerce, right? And e-commerce is not permanent, right? And we started changing our currency methods, right? So we went from going to bank to changing to Bitcoin to credit card. So the goal here is you can do most of the transactions in a couch. Right? So and it's an interesting question to ask. Yes, I have all my data, like how secure it is. And the bad news is there are very few people know about security. So that's a leverage company was, nobody's going to ask me, where's my security? Like, show me how you guys are, managing a cloud, right? So nobody's going to ask that. Only, like European Union, they have strict laws. So this is one area of exploitation, right? So your hackers can steal your data, you know, before you know it, your credit card is locked, and yeah, the money is gone. So the reason I said e-commerce is almost done is because we are moving to a different industry now, and that industry, as I see it, is healthcare. Right? Because their healthcare is almost like 15 years behind, and there's a lot of innovations need to be done. So one of the innovations which need to be done in healthcare is how do you consolidate the data? Like if you may go to like 10 different hospitals, but every time you go to a hospital, you have to enter your profile information and history all along, right? So that sucks. And so some of the innovations are how do we streamline, right, this process and make sure that we provide a very good customer experience. All right, so let's see. Okay, so I have 10 more minutes, so let me touch on like one live demo. Share, right? How do I share? Switch the screen. Just give me a second. All right. So I hope everyone can see the screen. So what I wanted to, tackle here is how the e-commerce is, from a psychological point of view and from an industry point of view, are providing goods to you. That's a good thing. And if the e-commerce didn't evolve, we cannot move the goods around, right? However, there's also exploitation, psychological, aspects of it. So for that, I'm gonna go. All right, so there's no personal data I'm sharing, so it's okay. It's for learning purpose. All right, so what you have to get as a perspective is how technology is tailored for you, okay? And in that process, how you're being tricked. Okay? And like I said, it may be a good thing or it may be a bad thing, right? We don't know, but but that's up to us to make that judgment. Okay? So if you look at the dashboard, you would see how things are made very easy, right? So here's a tile which says pick up where you left off, right? I don't have to go search again, right? I can just click here and land in that, right? And while I'm looking at it, there's also some deals which Amazon wants me to look at it. You know, although I don't want to buy it, but this is completely enticing, right? So there's a 40% off, 50% off. So yeah, uh, definitely enticing, right? And and the events which happens over the period of time, like Thanksgiving or uh, the Christmas, right? So you would see pretty much this is going to be personalized for you, right? And it's very hard to miss it. Okay, so let's click on one item. Okay, this is not a good one. Okay, this is a good one. So here's the kicker, right? Here's how the psychology comes into play. If you just saw 1699, right? There's a purchase decision you may not make it, right? And for you to, because you are here already, there are two things which is happening. This was like, it was $37, no, $17, and they're giving some discount, and there's a 5% off, and the time you go to checkout, they're gonna throw another 5% off. Right? So why are they doing that? Right? So the goal for them is, and it's true for any uh, any product. So the goal for them is, there's very limited money everybody has. Like, how much can I spend, for shopping, right? $500, maybe like $600. And once I reach that cap, I don't know, I may not go for shopping, right? So what these companies are doing is trying to get those $500 from everyone in their website. So, and they can do it the right way, but as far as I know, that's not happening. That's not going to happen, because we kind of like changed, or we busted ourselves in preferring products which are low quality, right? So we don't define quality anymore. So any product which is discount is high quality. I don't know. That seems to be norm. However, that gives the leverage for the manufacturers to just throw any garbage into the warehouse, and that lands in your home, and voila, you will see, in a month or two, it won't work. So to make matters worse, they also give you some, I would say, like maybe like a good brother effect, right? So if you go to Amazon, right, there's always a statement saying that, yeah, you don't like the product, you just return it, right? We'll take care of it. So what that means is, you get it anyways, right? And most likely you'll forget about it. Right? So if I came to Target, just to show you that everything here is red, so there's no Illuminati going here. The reason why they want to paint everything with the red is because they want you to click everything, right? If you don't click everything, then they are getting wrong in psychology, right? So, like, for instance, under $20, right? So that's an interesting, the products. And so few things, these are technology evolutions, right? So they add a car, they made shopping cart experience easier, and they made shipping easier, and these days it's all free shipping. So there's not a good reason for not to buy. However, what everyone has to recognize is the budget, for your family is limited, right? So there's always this conspiracy theories where, if you go buy certain things like gold, for example, on a certain shop, you'll be rich, right? So those are things to watch for. And just to wrap up, so here, these are my industry experience. I didn't touch on the technology aspects of it, right? However, it's really important to recognize that when you're coaching the students, right, you are responsible to educate them, right? because every student is going to, you know, empower this, more students. So it's a domino effect. So it's better to find out a point where someone has to put a stop to it. Right? Yeah, not all the problems can be solved in a day, um, but we have to take some steps. Right? And academic people can write books. That's the power they have. They can write good articles. Right? So use that, right? So you empower everyone and get them to a point where there's you can make an informed decision. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm right on time. It's 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Shakir. Thank you for an insightful presentation, Mr. Shakir. I know the time is there at 3 p.m. It's been a very difficulty. And apart from that, your presentation and innovation of e-commerce technology was very interesting and informative. We had a significant impact on us. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. Really, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shakir. Now, the participant feedback link will be posted in chat box. Kindly fill up your feedback. We'll go ahead and take some time for the questions now. There are questions in the chat box, Mr. Shakir. Okay. So, there is a questions from yeah, from Prabha Rajagopalan. He asked, is decision making emotion based for women and fact based for man always? I refute, awareness has increased now among women not to make impulsive decisions. So this is a question from Prabha now, Prabha Rajagopalan. So,
Yeah, I'm not a biology expert, but what I can tell you is evolution is a very, very small like it's a long process, right? So in order for like the fish to lose the legs, it took like millions of years, right? So in order to have a change in the wisdom tooth, it took millions of years. So, you it's how the brain is formed. And I would say in some sense we have to just let it roll, right? So we are trying to explore how we can coexist in the world and be part of the decisions. And in those decisions, some of them will be bad decisions. Um, but I wouldn't stereotype that, it's by just performing a surgery, things will change, right? You cannot, right? So it's if you look at the DNA profile for the Indians, South Africa is having like better mix of DNA profile for the Indian settlers, right? Because they've been there very long time. So, and there are some evolutions happening there. So it's we have to wait it out, and I'm pretty sure no one wants to live after 100 years. So it's going to be a cruel world. So we'll see. We'll leave to next generation. Yeah.
so the next question, is there any app color for logo to sell educational product like red, yellow, or food products? So this is one more question, sir.
Yeah, if if the target audience is children, right? So that's where you need to do some research. Like the colors really matters, because for every time the children sees an offending color, they would assume that this is how every product is going to be, right? So we shouldn't get into a state of normalization. So what we have to do is we have to research, right? So you guys are academic people, so find out a neutral color and see if you can you know, convince kids to use it, and that's how you start.
Thank you, Mr. Shaki. So one more question from the Lakshmi Devi. She asks, can you give some limelight into cyber security aspects we have to check to avoid phishing or data theft?
Yeah. So cybersecurity, I'll be honest with you, nobody got it right. So everybody says that they're working on it, but come on, uh, Facebook has been there for almost like 15 or 20 years now. Recently, they had a major issue. So cybersecurity is going to be always an issue, right? The reason why it's always an issue is when you place profits over the technology, you cut corners, and you don't you end up not doing the right things, and the things which you are cutting corners will be like taxing, right? So it's unfortunate, but uh, there's also management decisions which has been made. So not everyone likes the decision, but you have to just run with it, right?
Thank you, Mr. Shaki. One more questions. What is the opinion who is economically more benefited in e-commerce? Is it manufacturers or suppliers or customers or mediators, etc.? This is from Surashini Durai.
Yeah, recently I'm seeing the the small businesses, they just have tons of customers, and then they yield a lot of profit, and then they elevate themselves from small business to medium business. So there's always a Super Bowl moment, right? And you don't know, and that's what the startups are betting, right? So everyone who is running a startup, they I can bet that they wanted to get funded, right? And some point of time they want to sell it to big tech companies, right? So if that is the goal, right? So we are changing the landscape, right? So we want to innovate. Also, we don't care about the society, right? We care about just making money at that time. Is that bad? Um, I don't know. It depends on whom you ask. Making a lot of money is good things. It's always a good thing, but it's also you know there's a thin line on the social responsibility. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Shaki. So one more questions. In India, after demonstrations, only e-commerce developed all online transactions, including GPay, PhonePe, Paytm, Airtel Money, and others. Especially now in pocket money, only rupees 500. So now go on buy below 500 only. But if I have all online transactions, should buy more than rupees 500 without required? What about your suggestion, sir? This is a question from Dr. K. Veeramani.
Yeah, it's what I can tell you is everybody falls into this trap, right? You always start with budget, right? So you allocate shopping for 500, right? $500, and now you wanted to stop there, but the way the brain is operating, it's very hard to resist the next cool thing or the next, you know, and 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 men also do that, right? The largest purchaser from the app is men, not women. So women like to have an experience, so they always try to go through multiple websites, check out some deals, But if I have to do shopping, I'll just launch an app, just select one item, and then check out. Right? That's how fast I can get. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a self-control, and there's also if you don't get on top of it, you're looking at bankrupting yourself. Right? These are not strong words, right? I've seen people who can win a lottery, right? Like a million, $10 million or something like that. Still, they go bankrupt. and it always boggles your mind how they can lose $10 million because they just got it from lottery, right?
Thank you, Mr. Shaki. Now we can end the question and sections now. And now I invite Dr. Anis Akhtar, Associate Professor, Department of Corporate Secretaryships and Information System Management, to propose the word of thanks.
Thank you, Aftab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And good evening to one and all present here. Respected and our most distinguished speaker of the day, Mr. Shakir Bashir, Principal, Madam Dr. Antul Aziz, Vice Principal and Head of the Department of Business Administration, Dr. Firdaus Jahan, Dean of Business Studies and Head of the Department of Dr. P. Barakat, and my dear friends. Today, I feel incredibly honored and privileged to extend a vote of thanks on 6th day of International Faculty Development Program in collaboration with Tamil Nadu Advanced Technical Training Institute, Chennai. First of all, I extend my sincere thanks to the Almighty Allah for making today's event a resounding success with His blessings and grace showered upon all of us. On behalf of the Department of Corporate Secretaryship, Information Systems Management and Business Administration, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to the Honorable Speaker of the Day, Mr. Shakir Bashir, Senior Engineer Leader, Boeing Corporation, USA, who accepted our invitation and gave his vital time from his busy schedule to grace this meeting. Sir, today your session has enlightened us with more familiarity in innovation in e-commerce and help to tap the development potential. Your eminent presence has indeed made this event a memorable one. I extend my profound thanks to the management and our principal, Dr. Antul Aziz, for their consistent encouragement and support. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Firdaus Jahan, Vice Principal and Head of the Department of Business Administration, and Dr. Barakat, Dean of Business Studies, Head of the Department of Corporate Secretaryship, Information Systems Management, and we have been fortunate enough to be backed by proactive and dedicated heads for all ideas and plans that radiated a source of energy within us to carry out this huge event in a grand success. My thanks are due to Joshua Gerard, Chief Operating Officer, Tamil Nadu Advanced Technical Training Institute, who accepted our offer to partner with the Department of Corporate Secretaryship, Information Systems Management, and Business Administration, Justice Bashir Ahmed Syed College of Women, to host the 7 days International Faculty Development Program on professional progression in commerce and management. I extend my thanks to all my fellow faculty members of Department of Corporate Secretaryship, Information Systems Management, and Business Administration for their untiring efforts and cooperation in the successful completion of the 6th day of 7 days International Faculty Development Program. Last but not least, I thank all the participants across the world who have responded and made the International Faculty Program a grand event. I hope we would continue to work like this and organize such events in the future for the betterment and upliftment of our faculty. Once again, I thank everyone those who are present here. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Akhtar.
Thank you, Dr. Ali Sakkar. The dear participants, feedback link will be posted daily in the chat box and Telegram towards the end of the sessions. Kindly fill up on all 7 days to get the e-certificate. I thank the participants who showed an overwhelming response to our invitations and made the International Faculty Development Program a grand event. I thank each one of you to your lively participation and interactions. Once again, thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Shakir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.